All right, as you're watching our monologue, think about these three simple questions. Do we, as a constitutional republic, do we have the right to sovereignty? Do you believe in borders? Do you believe we have a right to protect those borders, protect our sovereignty? Now, for weeks, we've been warning you about the looming crisis at our southern border. Now, at least 5,000 migrants have already arrived in the Mexican border city of Tijuana, with thousands more still on the way. Now, they're all demanding entry into the U.S., most under an asylum designation. But over the weekend, we saw several hundred of these so-called asylum seekers. Look at what they're doing. They're rushing the U.S. border. They're hurling rocks, bottles, other objects over the fencing. 3 Border Patrol officers were struck. We have broken windows, damaged vehicles of Border Patrol. In order to protect the border and themselves, U.S. Border Patrol agents fired non-lethal tear gas to disperse the mob of migrants trying to break across by force. Earlier today, Border Patrol Chief Carla Provost, she described this tense and this scary situation. Take a look.
Our agents were being assaulted. A large group rushed the area, and they were throwing rocks and bottles at my men and women, putting them in harm's way, as well as other members of the caravan. We needed to disperse the group, and with that assaultive nature, it was imperative that we disperse them from the area.
So it wasn't because they seemed to be running toward the United States. It was because they were hitting your Border Patrol with rocks and bottles?
Yes, sir, they were.
And meanwhile, over at Fake News CNN, San Diego's Chief Border Patrol agent Rodney Scott had this to say about those who rushed the border. Take a look.
Explain the decision to use the tear gas, because that is one question I think people have this morning.
So one of our primary missions is to make sure that we keep the border safe and secure. I kind of challenged that this was a peaceful protest or that the majority of these people were claiming asylum. We ended up making about 42 arrests. Only 8 of those were females, and there were only a few children involved. The vast majority of the people we're dealing with are adult males. Similar to what we saw the first wave of the caravan that came up about a week or so ago, the group immediately started throwing rocks and debris at our agents, taunting the agents. And once our agents were assaulted and the numbers started growing, we had 2 or 3 agents at a time initially facing hundreds of people at a time. They deployed tear gas to protect themselves and to protect the border. If they were truly asylum seekers, they would have just walked up with their hands up and surrendered, and that did not take place.
And just a few moments ago on the story, Chief Scott also had this to say about the migrants. Let's take a look.
We took this caravan very serious from day one. It's like no caravan we've ever seen before. You've heard reports that caravans happen all the time. That's true, but not caravans that have a propensity for this type of violence and not these massive numbers of people. We watched as they came up through Mexico, the violence that they were subjecting the Mexican police and military to. We prepared accordingly.
More violent than previous caravans. This is a serious situation. We don't want anybody to get hurt, and we do know a lot about those now trying to cross our border. By the way, even on Conspiracy TV, MSNBC, a reporter actually stumbled upon the truth and told it. The majority of migrants at the border, they are not asylum seekers. They're mostly men looking for a better life. And I believe that probably about 99% of them. But we'll tell you more in a second. Take a look.
She says that she is hoping that they give her a chance to work. That's what we've heard from this family. This family hasn't really talked about asylum per se. They are saying that they don't even want to come to the United States. And definitely they're going to be asking for permission to work for 3 to 4 years. From what we've seen, the majority are actually men. And some of these men have not articulated that need for asylum. Instead, they have talked about, going to the United States for a better life and to find work.
Border security should not be a partisan issue. While most individuals who try to immigrate into the U.S., I understand it. They come from countries, no opportunities, poverty, good, decent people. They want what we often take for granted. But it's not always the case. Bad people constantly trying to gain access into our country. I've been down to the border more than anyone else that I know in the media, about 13 times. I've witnessed illicit drug smuggling operations, drug warehouses, human trafficking, violent gang members arrested. I've sat through a briefing with then Governor Rick Perry, showed 642,000 crimes committed against Texans alone at the hands of illegal immigrants in just a 7-year period. This week, a suspected illegal immigrant charged with killing a Texas teacher during a hit-and-run incident. And according to the DHS, they've identified, along with Mexican officials, over 500 criminals that have infiltrated the migrant caravan. Bad people moving among those that want opportunity, those with criminal records, always actively trying to get into the U.S. In order to protect the safety and security of everyone living here, we've got to protect our borders. If we had a secure wall right now, nobody would be in harm's way. In lieu of a robust border wall, this country will always be vulnerable. You saw it this weekend. Look at the videos. Look at the pictures. As agents forced to defend themselves against hundreds of so-called asylum seekers who are attempting to break into the United States by force. By the way, those who seek asylum don't generally assault U.S. Border Patrol officers. And there are about 10,000 or up to 10,000 more people coming. But not according to the left. Liberals, Democrats, the media now waging a full-scale smear campaign against those defending our rule of law, our country. One Democratic senator actually tweeted, then deleted, a suggestion that the Border Patrol engaged in a chemical weapons attack. Why? By firing tear gas? Rihanna called the Border Patrol's actions, quote, terrorism. And then there's the Democratic, well, I guess rock star, Ocasio-Cortez, tweeting, quote, this: asking to be considered a refugee and applying for status isn't a crime. It wasn't for Jewish families fleeing Germany. It wasn't for targeted families fleeing Rwanda. It wasn't for communities fleeing war-torn Syria. By the way, last time I checked, throwing rocks and bottles at law enforcement generally doesn't count as an application for refugee status. And any comparison, by the way, as Lindsey Graham pointed out in a tweet today, of the Holocaust to modern-day Central America does an extreme disservice to those who suffered and were murdered with unbelievable evil under Nazi Germany. The demonization of the Border Patrol, the Trump administration, continued all over TV. Predictable but sad. Take a look.
We have plenty in this country, plenty to share, plenty for everybody. And I think we need to remember that the reason we're great is because of this melting pot of immigrants.
There has got to be a pragmatic and compassionate answer here that does not involve tear gassing children. That is not who America is.
Using tear gas in this situation does not seem justified. We are investigating the facts on the ground. But the Border Patrol has a history of using unnecessary force.
Here we look at children being subjected to tear gas. That's the United States causing that. That's outrageous.
He's on the wrong side of history and the wrong side of decency.
We are not a military dictatorship. And the military does have a certain level of independence. He is the commander-in-chief. But the military also does have the authority to decide for themselves where there are moral lines that they will or won't cross.
So what should Border Patrol do when they're being hit with rocks and bottles and other things? What you just saw is just pure politics in motion. People literally lying to you. You saw the video. We'll show it again tonight. In 2013, interestingly, during the height of the Obama administration, guess what? Border Patrol agents did the exact same thing. Quote, they used pepper spray to fend off a group of 100 migrants who attempted to rush the same exact port of entry. So where was the mainstream left-wing media's outrage then? You know, where were Democratic tweets? Democrats tweeting dramatic tweets and accusing the president of all sorts of things. Of course, that was then. This is now. And while the security threats of unvetted immigration remain the same, the politics of the left have changed and changed dramatically. We've shown you the video over and over again. They now believe it's politically expedient to push for open borders, unfettered immigration, sanctuary cities, the end of ICE. And that's why Democratic presidential hopeful Kamala Harris actually said, well, there's a perception out there, isn't there, with ICE and the KKK? Now the left is trying to score political points over what is now an actual real crisis. Our Border Patrol agents deserve our protection. The rule of law needs to be adhered to. They don't seem to care about the 500 criminals that Mexico and the U.S. have identified as having infiltrated the caravan. They don't care about the extreme security risks associated with illegal immigration. They sure as hell don't care that each illegal immigrant, according to a study out 3 weeks ago, that successfully enters the country costs you, the American taxpayer, around $70,000 per year. And sadly, the left only cares about winning, no matter what the cost, no matter the damage, no matter the risk. They're not getting rocks hurled at them or bottles hurled at them. Clearly political. Sadly, this is just the beginning. Let me make a prediction. Over the next 2 years, the left's sole focus will be destroy Trump for years. I have warned you, about the 5 forces out to destroy this president. We've had 2 years of nonstop attempts at delegitimizing a duly elected president. You have the Democrats, 1, the mainstream media, 2, the deep state, 3, weak Republicans, 4, never Trumpers. They want to be proven right. So mark my words. As we now head into January, the hate Trump House of Representatives, when they take power, those 5 forces will align and spew anti-Trump vitriol every second, every minute, every hour, every day. The good news for us, they will overreach. They will really extend what they think is a mandate that is not. What they won't do, sadly, is anything that will help the people of this country. You, the people, we, the people. And that is the most, right now we have the most radical left-wing House of Representatives this country has ever seen. There are no more moderates. And of course, the deep state side, well, we've been witnessing Mueller's destroy Trump partisan witch hunt play out for what? The past 558 days. And breaking tonight, this is huge news. Mueller is alleging that his top target, Paul Manafort, remember the target was about loan applications years ago, tax violations years ago. They're saying that he lied to investigators after agreeing to his plea deal. We also learned that Roger Stone's associate, Jerome Corsi, he's rejected a plea deal from Robert Mueller. The deal involved Corsi pleading guilty to 1 count of perjury. Greg Jarrett will join us in a moment. Here's what he noted. What we're seeing here is the classic Mueller-Weissman tactic, using threats and coercion to get people basically to test the lie. In other words, what that usually means is you either tell us what we want you to tell us, you lie, or you're going to get punished. Think about this. If they said what Mueller wanted, Corsi and Manafort, all they have to do is say what they're basically saying they want to hear. They would likely get a better deal. By not doing this, it means both those men know that they may be risking spending the rest of their lives in jail, and they have decided not to do it. This is a profound development, and I can't wait to hear the full backstory in both cases. Look at General Flynn, 30-plus years serving his country. The FBI didn't even think he lied. Comey didn't think he lied. Strzok didn't think he lied. But he was on the brink of bankruptcy, had to sell his home to pay his attorneys, so they turned the screws, probably threatened to go after his own son, and now he's awaiting sentencing. And by the way, they didn't even believe he lied. Then there's George Papadopoulos. He's now in jail for 2 weeks. He feels like he was set up big time. Just look at his tweets. He'll be locked up for the next 14 days. We'll talk to him afterwards. And does any of this have anything to do with Russia collusion? Nothing, because there is none. There is no Trump-Russia collusion. But we have been able to reveal on this program Clinton collusion. But if they cared about collusion, they certainly don't care about that, because if they did, they would look at surveillance abuse, unmasking abuse, leaking intelligence abuse, lying to FISA courts, and committing fraud upon the courts. They would look at the circular leaks of the phony dossier. They'd look at how the dossier was used to lie to the American people before the election, and how Hillary paid for those Russian lies. They never told the FISA court this. No one seems to care in Mueller's office. Hillary's bought and paid for Russian lies. Now, this has literally become the biggest travesty of justice, a one-sided witch hunt that has no interest in truth or real Russia collusion. Hillary can pay for Russian lies. They don't care. They can propagandize and lie to the American people. They don't care. Even the author of the dossier, Christopher Steele, even he doesn't stand by the dossier. So my warning is buckle up, because Democrats are going to rehash all of it when Democrats take the House. We'll have a lot more later in the program. But first, in just moments, we're going to take you live, as you can see, to Mississippi. The president is currently about to rally voters ahead of this important runoff tomorrow between Republican Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith and liberal Democrat Mike Espy. This is a really important race that is definitely in play if you're in Mississippi, because a win for the Republican Hyde-Smith, well, that means an opportunity for the GOP to solidify its lead in the Senate. It's either going to be 53-47 or 52-48. And remember, votes in the Senate are so important, especially when it comes to things like, confirming constitutionalists, originalists, justices for the president to make important appointments like replacing Jeff Sessions. And you have Democrat Mike Espy, a far-left liberal, that clearly supports Chuck Schumer and the rest of his radical Democrats already in Washington. He's been dodged by many ethical questions stemming from his recent work, lobbying work for an alleged war criminal from the West African country, the Ivory Coast. Espy was also forced out of the Clinton administration back in '94 while under investigation for allegedly receiving improper gifts. While he was acquitted of the 30 felony charges, the independent counsel found a pattern of, quote, improper behavior. Now, regardless of what the mainstream media wants you to believe, this race is very simple. Hyde-Smith is a vote for the Trump agenda. That means confirming originalist justices. A vote for Espy is a vote for the swamp and Chuck Schumer. It's that simple. So, Mississippi, this race matters, and I hope you vote tomorrow.